Hey guys, this is Kevin, and for today's Expat Philippines video, I wanted to talk with you for a few minutes about public transportation. One thing about the Philippines is that you can get by pretty well without your own vehicle in many circumstances, especially if you live in more of an urban environment. Most of the time that I was in the Philippines, I just used public transportation and got by pretty well. So I'll share with you some of the different options that are available. First of all, there is the Jeep or the jeepney. That is the iconic vehicle of the Philippines. They're everywhere, and that is a really ideal way to get from point A to point B if you have a shorter trip to take. So if you need to get somewhere that's only going to take 5 or 10 minutes or something like that, then Jeep is the way to go because it's only going to cost 7 or 8 pesos. Now, one thing you have to be a little bit aware of is that they will really try to pack people into a jeepney, and so for that reason, some of the snatchers really like to operate within those jeepneys, and you have to be aware of that. So you do have to guard your possessions. You have to be cautious about personal security. But I would say that's something, if you move to the Philippines or if you visit there, you need to try riding jeepneys at least a few times just to experience it, just to see how most Filipinos get around. And you may find that for your shorter trips, that's what you use most of the time. That's what I did. Now, for longer trips, let's say from one end of the city to another, or you're traveling in between cities, buses are probably going to be your best option in terms of price and comfort. When I would go from Angeles City to Manila or from Manila back to Angeles City, then I would always take a bus. Or when my wife and I would visit her family in the province, again, we would always take a bus. The price varies anywhere between, it varies a lot depending on how far you're going to go. But usually, if you're going in between cities, it's going to be between, I would say, between 100 and 300 peso. I think I'm remembering that correctly. Obviously, the longer distance you have to go, the more it's going to cost. But anyway, I used buses a lot, and overall, that was one of my preferred methods for getting around. Now, another thing that people use a good bit for longer trips are SUVs or vans. So you take an SUV, you pack a bunch of people in there, and that takes you across the city, or in some cases from one city to another, especially vans. I remember there was a van that went from my wife's province to Baguio, and we took that trip one time. That was about a 2 or 3 hour trip, I think. Those are okay, but the problem with vans is that they just pack vans and SUVs is they just pack a lot of people in there. So it's okay. It's fine if you need to use that method to get somewhere, but I think you're going to find that it's not one of the most comfortable ways to get around. But again, if you need to get somewhere and you need to get somewhere cheaply, that is an option, the van or the SUV. Now, I'm going to mention some other forms of transportation, and what many of these have in common that I'm about to mention is you're dealing with one driver. And anytime you're dealing with just one driver, it's going to cost a little more, and you may encounter a driver that really wants to rip you off. It really just depends. So, for example, a taxi, obviously, you're just dealing with the taxi driver. And taxis are great for getting around in the city. They are more expensive, obviously, than a Jeep or something like that. But if you are hot and you just want to be in some air conditioning, you want a little more, what in theory should be a more peaceful ride, sometimes the taxi is the way to go. As I mentioned, one problem you're going to run into, sometimes in places like Manila, taxi drivers can be really great and friendly and fair, or they can just try to rip you off when they see you're a foreigner. It just really depends. So anyway, taxis are one of your options, and they're not that expensive comparatively speaking. I forgot what they're running right now. I'm not sure because I haven't been in the Philippines in a few years. But for I remember back when I was in Manila, I think the standard fare was, the standard meter was 50 peso. That's where it started, and then the meter would run while you're traveling around. Usually I would add 20 or 30 peso to the meter. It was kind of a little tip just to, just to show gratitude. But those are taxis. You may want to use those. Also, tricycles. A tricycle is what they call a motorcycle with a sidecar. I use those a good bit in Angeles City because, for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, taxis were not available, generally speaking, in Angeles City. So those are relatively expensive, meaning to say the what you have to pay for the distance that you have to go. Like when I would take one from, let's say I had some groceries and I went to my subdivision and I needed to get from the entrance of my subdivision to our apartment. I believe that cost about 15 or 20 peso. I think I paid 20 because that's 15 plus a 5 peso tip. And that's not a bad deal, but it is comparatively expensive. It's more expensive than some of the other methods. Or if you have to take a tricycle, let's say my wife and I went to the store, to the mall, and we had some groceries, so we didn't want to try to bring those with us onto a Jeep, then we would sometimes hire a tricycle to go from the mall back to our apartment. And again, if I remember correctly, that would cost about 100 peso or something like that, which that's not too bad if you think about it, but it's still relatively expensive compared to other methods of transportation. There are also pedicabs. A pedicab is a bicycle with a sidecar. And I didn't use those very much, but it's a way, especially if you just don't feel like walking. If something, let's say, would be a long walk and you don't feel like walking, or if you have groceries or something with you, pedicabs are also an option. So let me see what else I need to mention here. If you are in Manila, there is a monorail. It's called the MRT or the LRT. The advantage of the monorail is it puts you above the traffic. So if you can get inside the car, then you can get from point A to point B fairly quickly. The disadvantage is they tend to be very crowded, especially during rush hour, and you may wait in line and wait a long time for the train. And then once you finally get to the train, it may be absolutely packed. So to be honest, I wasn't that crazy about the LRT or the MRT, but it is one way to get around in Manila. All right, one last thing that I'll mention, a couple of things. For going from one island to another, there are obviously airports. That's what I would advise you to take. But sometimes a lot of people in the Philippines, when they're going from one island to another, they will take a ferry. And I've never used those, so I can't really say a lot about them. But that's what some of them did. They would take the ferry boat going from one place to another. Last but not least, what I will mention is Uber. That was not a thing when I was in the Philippines. I think that's something that's just gotten popular over the last few years. But in Manila and some of the cities, from what I understand, there are some people that use that and really like that. So that's something that you may want to consider. The issue you always run into with Uber anywhere in the world is that the local government always wants to stop them and prevent them from doing business. So I don't know what the status of that is in the Philippines right now. So anyway, those are some of the public transportation options if you visit the Philippines or live there. Hopefully this video has helped you. If you have liked it, please click like or subscribe to this channel, and I'll talk to you again next time.